Everybody, it is Ben Ash here, and boy, do we have one heck of a live stream today. This is really exciting for me. But before we get into it, let me explain whom our guest is. So today we have a very special guest. For those that aren't familiar with her accolades, let me give you a little quick rundown. She has 7 albums with Against Me, 5 of which that have. Oh, and I also have. There we go. Sorry, I had that playing. So let's do that again. For those that aren't familiar with her accolades, let me give you a quick rundown. She has 7 albums with Against Me, 5 of which have been on the Billboard charts, along with 2 solo albums, the latest of which, Stay Alive, was released on October 1st by Polyvinyl Records and can be heard on most streaming services. She is an Emmy Award winner for her documentary series True Trans and is a vocal ambassador for the LGBTQIA+ community, which has garnered her recognition and awards from The Advocate and Out magazine, among many other publications and websites. Please welcome to the broadcast, the very own, the one and only, Laura Jane Grace. What's up, Laura?
Hi, how's it going?
Doing well. Now, if you don't mind my nerdiness as a guitar player, what is it you're holding in your hands exactly?
I am holding a Yamaha CSF3M. I have to check the name because unfortunately those names sometimes don't stick with me. But this is just kind of like my at home, I leave it lying everywhere guitar. And often, I'm sitting on my bathroom floor right now. I often leave it sitting here in the corner of my bathroom. Just, for instances like this, when I'm like doing a live chat on my bathroom floor.
But that's perfect, because as if you're a novice musician, not you, but I'm talking to the people watching.
No, it's fine. I am.
Honestly, there's no better acoustics you'll ever get than a bathroom. If you have a tiled bathroom, some of the best records have been made in those. So as long as that's all that's being made in those bathrooms while they're being used.
Well, I'll tell you, I've been taking a lot of baths in general during this pandemic, so I spent a lot of time here.
See, I know, thanks to all the first responders and whatnot and making things happen, but when you're quarantined, you realize you suddenly have time for things you never thought, and baths, like my wife has been taking baths like nobody's business, just all the time, because she has all that time now. It's great.
Self-care, it's important.
But we did not come here to talk about bathrooms the entire time, I'm sure. We came here to understand who you are as a musician, talk about the latest album, talk about gear stuff. So let's talk about songwriting. Why not? So I have a question. It's the age-old question about songwriting. First of all, what is that process like? Do you do the lyrics and the music? Do you do the music then the lyrics? Is it circumstantial?
I primarily start with lyrics. Every once in a while, I was talking about this earlier, where one time I think I can think of where I started with the song title actually first was probably one of my most well-known songs, I Was a Teenage Anarchist. That's the only time I've ever started with the title and been like, I want to do something kind of like, Michael Landon, I Was a Teenage Werewolf. I'll write a song around this concept. And that was one time I started that way. But I'm a strong believer in starting with lyrics first. My thought process behind that is, this is it. This is the fretboard of a guitar. You will never have, you can have more strings than this. You don't need more strings than this. And you could have a larger scale neck or whatever, but it's always going to be a chord combination of G, C, D, G, D, E, something like that. And all of those chord structures, those chord patterns have been done before, frankly. And when I listen to my most favorite songs, oftentimes I'm like in awe and wonder of them. I'm like, how did the artist do that? And I'll sit down with my acoustic and I'll be like, oh, they're just going from A to E over and over again, or whatever. But with lyrics, there are infinite more combinations of vowels, consonants, and syllables, right? And right. So it's kind of like conceptually, you can either get a room and arrange the furniture within the room, or you can arrange the furniture and then build the room around the furniture. And I would much rather build the room around the furniture. So that is primarily the way I start.
Okay, yeah. That makes a lot of sense, actually, because I'm always nervous myself as a musician, because I'm actually finally at the young age of 32 writing songs from beginning to end as I try. And I'm always like, you know what? People are going to hate it if I have 2 chords. And then you make a valid point where Bob Dylan made a song with 3 chords and still gets plenty of royalties from it. And it's the words and the melody that make it speak for itself.
Well, and what you don't realize too with that too is that it's like oftentimes, especially if you're just a guitar player writing songs, what you're really doing when you're starting with the chord structure or the chord pattern for the song is you're just picking the key. And the melody, which is, which is still a musical aspect of it, the melody can be dictated by the cadence of the lyrics. So then you can write that melody vocally with your lyrics, and then you go back, or I'll go back and I'll transcribe what that melody is that I figured out lyrically and figure out what the notes are. And then that's how like you build the riff that comes in at the intro, or maybe it's the bridge, bridge riff or whatever. But those two components, where oftentimes it's not a melody that comes to me, and being inhibited because you're afraid, like, oh, I'm just going to pick the same chords. It's like, well, everyone's going to pick those same chords. Everyone has those same chords. But words, and if you're describing experiences, those are truly unique. Your experiences are your own, and your vocabulary, like the ability to choose different words, is like just far greater than you have with chord patterns.
That's why you can't copyright a chord progression, but you can copyright lyrics and melodies.
Well,
I mean,
exactly. Same with
totally,
rhythms.
I mean, and I always think about how Paul McCartney, when he wrote Yesterday, it wasn't titled Yesterday, it was Scrambled Eggs. He just figured out a melody and then put lyrics on top of that because it was just Scrambled Eggs, but then he went Yesterday because as long as you get that rhythm and the melody and you have that locked in, the words can be anything. I mean,
Totally. Yeah. And
like
oftentimes, like,
I'm
it took
sorry.
me a while to figure it. Sorry, it took. I'm just excited about this. I really like talking
Same.
about stuff like this. It took me a while to figure that out specifically too. Of like, okay, you're writing a verse, and let's say it's a 4-line verse, and if you pay attention to the consonants or the cadence there, you're like, oh, the pattern is, let's say, 5-7-5-9, and you can write whatever, like yesterday 4, right? Scrambled eggs 4. So you just need to figure out a different like word pattern that fits into 4, right?
It's haiku, essentially.
Essentially, yeah, it's just different arrangements or different versions of that. And once I figured that out, I was like, oh, well then this is like limitless, and it takes the pressure off of like, in that moment, like I have to come up with the most brilliant lyric right here, right now, to fit this thing, because really, like, even scientifically speaking, it's that pressure. Like when you're writing a song, you want it to be in your frontal lobes of your brain. You want to
Yeah.
be in the flow state. And the second you become stressed out and self-aware, it shuts down those frontal lobes, and then you're in your lizard brain, and you can't get nothing done in your lizard brain.
Oh, I mean, it's a fun puzzle though. I love playing around with what works with what, and we'll never be satisfied as musicians. It's impossible. But you get as satisfied as possible with the thing, and then you just say, out into the world, be one with the world as a song. But
Sure.
I love it. Even if it's impossible sometimes for me, it's still fun to do so. Um, so we just brought up the pandemic briefly, and I know that is in a weird way thematic to why this album even exists, Stay Alive. So obviously you were trying to write this for your band Against Me, and then suddenly we all got quarantined and you can't record anything with anybody in person. So you took some of those songs and you put them on this album, Stay Alive. So what I'm curious is, obviously you had some kind of idea how these songs would fit into a full band aspect. How did your writing and production of these songs change with these new limitations?
Well, I guess, as you said, like I've been working on these songs for the past like 2 years, and really had an excess of songs. And, for the past year, all of 2019, I was on tour with another project that I was doing called The Devouring Mothers. I put out a record on Bloodshot Records in the end of 2018, spent all of 2019 touring on that, while at the same time touring with my main gig, Against Me. And so we had, like, towards the end of the year, we'd started getting together and working on songs, working in the studio, and had continued on in the first couple months of this year. Got together for a week in January, got together for a week in February, week in March. I played the Bernie Sanders rally in Lansing, Michigan, early March. Then we left on a tour, supposed to be like a 3-week tour. We got 3 shows into the tour, and the tour, we had to cancel. We had to go home because that was when the pandemic really hit. So at that point, I had like 30, 35 songs that I was just like, we were throwing around, we were playing as a band, but it wasn't really clicking. It wasn't like we had that many songs and we knew like, this is the record, we're gonna go in, we'll record it after this tour, we're done. Like we were still like really early in the process. And it was kind of like I was reaching this point of frustration almost, that no one's fault, or anything like that, but where I'm writing these songs and I'm bringing them to the group or bringing to the people we're working with, and it's never good enough. Like it's always like, well, what if we did that? What if we did this with it? What if we added that there or took this away or did that? So when the pandemic hit and I came home and I'm sitting there realizing, like we're having to cancel tour by tour the rest of our plans for the year. It's clear that our plans for making a record aren't going to be able to go ahead because none of us live in the same city. None of us live in the same state. We just cannot get into a room for the foreseeable future to work on a record. And thinking like, well, damn, like, again, I have like 30 some odd songs here. And what, like, maybe this pandemic lasts a year, maybe it lasts 2 years. In 2 years from now, am I going to want to be like, hey,
Heaven
everybody,
forbid, heaven forbid.
yeah, but like, let's be real. It could happen.
Right,
And so in
right.
2 years, am I going to be like, hey, let's all get back into a room together? And you remember those 35 songs that we were working on that weren't really clicking with us? Let's get right back into that. Like no one's going to want to do that.
No, it's unfeasible, honestly.
Right. So then what's the other alternative? Throw all the songs away? That seemed like it kind of sucked too. So I was like, I really think that there's already a record here. And I really think that, like, approach wise, like there's these handful of songs on here that like I'm just perfectly happy with. I'm fine sitting here on my bathroom floor playing them on my acoustic guitar alone, and that makes me happy. And right now, it's not unrealistic. It's not dramatic to say like, what if I fucking die? Like what if I get the virus and I'm sick and I die? And
Honestly, I've been thinking the same thing. It could happen to any of us at any time if we're not safe, and everything you said I'll do later then never happens.
Right. So like the idea of like, well, I have these songs, I can still make a record. I just have to change my approach. I have to think about it in a different way, which means I can't use a band right now. And I have to record here in Chicago because that's where I am. And I was like, well, but Chicago's a huge city and there's so many resources here. Like it's totally possible to make a record here. And so I did that. I just changed my way of thinking and kind of really selfishly in that way was like, I just want to make a record that makes me happy. That I'm just like, I hope other people are into it, but like just me and a guitar, just whatever I can do, just like whatever feels good.
And I can safely say I just listened to the record this past week in preparation for this, and it's great. And I should tell everyone you should listen to it because one, it's a great record, if I may say so, but two, it does not take a lot of your life to listen. It's not like you have 8-minute prog rock epics happening. Like some of the songs are less than 2 minutes. You could listen to this album on a car ride to work. There's no excuse not to listen to it. It's a great album, a lot of acoustic guitar, and there's actually some stuff with interesting instrumentation, but I'll get to that in a moment. But you were saying you did this in Chicago, and one of the big things, because there's not actually a lot of, I did some research, there's not too much out there about the record, but I know that Steve Albini worked on this with you. Now, if you are watching this, you're not familiar with the name, some of these things he's worked on will go, oh, yeah, like Pixies' Surferosa, Helmet's Meantime, Nirvana's In Utero, Jimmy Page and Robert Plant's Walking into Clarksdale. That's the only record they worked on together, and they asked for Steve Albini. Gogo Bordello's Gypsy Punks, Jarvis Cocker's Further Complications, Ty Seagal's debut album, and if you watch the show Sonic Highways, Foo Fighters recorded a song with Steve Albini in the studio that I'm assuming you also worked with him in.
Yes, the same room, everything, yeah. And I saw that as well. The Sonic Highways episode. And the studio is called Electrical Audio. It's like right down the street from me. And so when I started thinking about that, and I was like, where would I want to record in Chicago? I was like, oh yeah, Electrical Audio. It's Steve Albini.
No brainer.
And then also, at the end of the summer 2019, I'd been out with my friend Frank Iero, plays in My Chemical Romance.
Oh yeah.
But he recorded his last record with Steve Albini, and it was something we had talked about while we were on the tour bus together, and so it was like there fresh in my head. But I knew also that specifically Steve was an analog recording engineer, and the second Against Me record we ever made, a record called As the Eternal Cowboy, we recorded at Ardent Studios in Memphis, Tennessee. That was an all analog recording, but it had been a second since I'd made an all analog record, and really like as soon as the pandemic hit, how quick everything became about Zooms and like, live streaming and all that stuff. I had like genuine panic attacks about it. And I just wanted like the exact opposite of that experience. I wanted no computers involved. involved. I wanted it to be like an auditory experience, and I wanted it to be more of like a documentary process, because we don't have live music right now. So if we don't have live music and all we have is music that's being fabricated together in a DAW, like, then there's just no live experience. There's no actual captured music. So I wanted to make
It
something that
kills
was
me
like,
hearing. I know that's the situation, but it kills me to also have people reiterate it because I am a concert junkie. I love to see shows live. And when this pandemic hit, my wife was relieved because I didn't have to spend money on tickets for a while. But at the same time, I was like, all my favorite bands, they're like they're slowing down, they're staying at home, and like you and I hope I get to see you live one day instead of this.
right, yeah. And it's like, this is nice, like, it's
Of
still a
course,
connection, but it is like a poor substitute for the real thing. Let's just be honest. It's not,
100%.
this is not a face to face conversation. I'd much rather have a face to face conversation with you. It's nice to talk to you, but
Yeah,
same thing with, like, with recording, with music. It's like, I just needed something that felt real, that didn't feel like it was going to disappear into the ether the second that the Wi-Fi connection was gone. So, I knew that could be achieved that way. And I knew also, like, with Steve's approach to recording, like, that he prides himself on being an engineer specifically, not a
yeah.
producer. And I really just, like, I wanted someone to set up microphones, to make it sound really good, to press record, and to not give me their opinion on my songwriting. Like, that's just all I wanted.
Because
So,
honestly, he's a brilliant engineer. I have nothing bad to say about him in that respect. But his approach, like you said, is you might, if like I'm at home and I press record on GarageBand and I have a mic plugged into my interface, that's him on a more professional approach. He's no nonsense. He just wants you to get the song out, and he just has the console. That's his gig. He's just,
mhm.
you paid me to make the album happen. Let's do this. And what I read was you did that album in 2 days. Correct
Yeah,
me if
well, we tracked in 2 days and then we mixed in another 2 days. So 4 days total in the
how
studio.
many albums are made in a week? That's nuts. I mean, it's impressive and awesome because, like I said, I listened to the album before that information. I'm like, this is very good. And just by default, you think, oh, yeah, albums take sometimes weeks, if not months, if not years. And you're like, yeah, 4 days. And I'm like, wow, that's a pretty great album if you were able to make it in 4 days. And I'm just speaking on behalf of myself. Impressed me lyrically and production wise. And it's what I loved about the album was it it felt you can how do I phrase this? Sometimes when people hear just a singer and an acoustic guitar, they're like, well, that's easy. But that's not inherently easy to make a fully fledged album that flows very well and has some great surprises, both lyrically and production wise in it. So I commend you on that because it's, like I said, it's a great record and it's great for anyone who wants something acoustic with a bit more grit because some people don't know what folk punk really is. In some cases,
Sure.
they think they don't know how to mesh the two, but it's almost like if Bob Dylan was angrier. That's how I like to describe folk punk in a sense. But
I'll take it.
yeah, you should. It's a compliment because Bob Dylan's great and you're fantastic in your own right.
Thank you.
Um, so what I'm also curious about, and I should, by the way, I should mention, we're still doing the vinyl giveaway. So I put in the comments. I'll be picking a winner at 6 o'clock, and someone's gonna get the vinyl copy of this record, which that's exciting. I mean, I'm a vinyl collector myself, so that's very cool. Um, and okay. So the next thing that I was curious about was because I was saying there were surprises. Now the surprises I mean is when you listen to the first two tracks, you kind of get into a groove. You're like, okay, Laura's playing guitar, singing. That's basically it. And then all of a sudden, I'm hearing a drum machine and a sequencer for bass and electric guitars on some tracks. So, what I'm curious is on songs like Shelter in Place, Supernatural Possession, and the Ice Cream song, what made you decide that of these songs, it's not just going to be vocals and acoustic guitar? What made you go, let's throw this other extra thing into it?
Well, I'll say first of all that I did record versions of each of those songs that are just me and the acoustic guitar. So it was an actual choice at the end of tracking of, like, let's go with that version of it. So there was actually 18 songs recorded total in the session. But I like I thought the record needed dynamics, like that it needed more than just linear, just acoustic guitar straight across it. And it's tough because, like, I'm a fan of folk music. My career is firmly rooted in me having started being just a singer with an acoustic guitar, oftentimes busking on street corners. That's where I come from. At the same time, I will be the first person to tell you that if I were to walk into a show space of any kind and I saw a person with an acoustic guitar, I'd be like, oh, Jesus fucking Christ, here we go. And about 10 minutes into it, my attention span is going to wander. So,
It's all about
like,
setting, honestly.
you know, I get it. So, like, I felt like it needed some dynamics and needed some of those surprises in there. And some of the things too were just like, I love experimenting with drum machines, not because I know how to use drum machines, but because like I like to learn how to use them, and also like that's how I like to write. Like I like something keeping the tempo for me that I can just like, okay, give me a kick snare beat over and over again, and I'll just ride along to that. And then oftentimes I'll like build whole demos around that, and then I'll fall in love with the demo so hard that I'm like, in the band context, I'm talking to Adam, my drum, and I'm like, can you just do that? Just kick snare, no fills at all. Just
I
like,
know exactly what you're talking about because I record a lot of stuff. Like my phone is packed with ideas, and it's always me taking my loop pedal that has drum tracks on it. I randomly pick a speed and a type of drum beat, and it could be bossa nova for heck's sake. I mean, it's
yeah,
have anything on it, and then I'm like, you know what? Okay, now this is the kind of bass I want. This, and this is the kind of guitar. Because if you don't give me drums, I'm scared I'm going to write the same songs 20,000 times. You throw in a drum track, and all of a sudden I have a whole new, fresh idea. And so I know what you mean. Drums can be the biggest inspiration for a songwriter, and even like a drum machine, like a 808 or something like that, just like a fun drum machine, and just being able to just have something looping and going, okay, get into the groove, get into the groove. All right, it's going to be this kind of guitar track, or it's going to be this kind of bass. And some of the best songs come from that.
yeah. I have one of those 808 reissues, by the way. I like it. It's a lot
Fun.
of fun. The drum machine though that I used on the song "Shelter in Place," the first song on the record that has a drum machine on it, was a Rhythm 77, which I believe is like the second drum machine ever made by Roland. Um,
Huh.
that I had gotten at random, and oftentimes like I'll pick up a drum machine or I'll pick up a piece of gear, and it's true with guitars too, where I'll know where I'm like, this has a place. This guitar came into my life to write a song with me, and I will find its usage. Like eventually it will come. And that drum machine I'd had for a while, and then finally it all came together on that song. I was like, this is it. But that
Perfect.
was one of the things that Steve and I were talking about in the studio. Where did you ever listen to the band Suicide?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, well, like they're a great example of like what I consider to be great use of drum machine, where it's like as long as it's linear, it's good. The second you try to throw in drum fills on a drum machine, I'm out. I don't want anything to do with it.
You got to have, I forget there's this, I can't remember the name of the heavy metal band, but it's not really a band. It's a guy in a studio and he programmed his drums, but they're the most authentic sounding drums, and it was from the 90s. So like only him and the band, someone's going to say it in the comments. I'm going to feel so stupid. But needless to say, let the professionals who use drum machines do the fill stuff. But the best thing is just to fiddle around with drum machines and come up with the craziest concoctions of stuff. Um, but speaking of gear, we're getting into gear. We're Sam Ash Music. We're all about gear. So let's get into a little bit of it with maybe the question you've heard a million times if any other publication has asked you. What gear do you have in the studio, and what gear do you take on tour? And is there any in between? Like, do you have a guitar you use everywhere? Do you have mixers or interfaces? Like, what is your ideal stuff?
Sure. Well, so for my touring setup, amp wise, for like years now, I've been across the board AC30s, Vox, and I've played with four AC30s, two stacked on each side of me, and I just love existing in the kind of cone of sound that the AC30s give me. Guitar wise, live, I kind of jump all over the place, and you know, I'll do the majority of the set on an electric, and then I'll do a couple sets on an acoustic. Um, but for the electric side of it, like the past 3 some odd years, I've fallen in love hard with this Nash. It's a Jazzmaster body. I forget what their exact model number is for it, but it's essentially a Jazzmaster, you know. But that, and then I collect Rickenbackers. I love Rickenbackers or
Basses or guitars?
guitars.
Okay.
Rickenbackers, right? I adore them. Just like aesthetically, the way they
Oh,
look,
they're the coolest. They'll never be
right?
out of style. It's just the like you could set it in any room and it's always eye catching.
Yeah, 100%. And like I really also respect just how mean the company is essentially, where they're like, we're not giving any artist any support. You just buy our stuff or you don't, you know? I'm like, okay, that's cool. I like how standoffish you are. But at the same time, like I've found that I never really enjoy recording with a Rickenbacker. That usually, especially because James, who plays guitar and against me, he plays Les Pauls. That usually there's like tuning discrepancies that I feel like I run into or like can hear oftentimes, specifically like on the G string. It usually gets a little squirrely. So like traditionally I'll use either I've used the Nash a couple times or I'll use a Tele of some sort for recording. And then recording also, I don't use the Voxes for recording. I have like an old 70s Fender Twin Reverb that I've just used forever since I've had it since I was like 22. It's on every Against Me record, every record I've done. And that's what I've used amp-wise for recording. But for acoustics, like I've fallen hard for the Yamahas. And you know, this is like my go-to kicking around the house guitar and also traveling guitar because it fits in the overhead compartments in an airplane. The
That's pretty
CSF
convenient. I mean, not that we're
F3M.
flying any planes anytime soon.
No, no. But for when you are, it's great for
Exactly.
that. But I got an FG3 recently that like I played it the other night in the live stream I did, and I played it like against all odds where it doesn't have a built-in pickup, and I was like, God damn it, I put one of the Dean Markleys in there just to be able to play it, even though like sonically because it's like just a put it in the sound hole pickup, it wasn't as good as a pickup that's mounted or anything,
Sure.
but it's just like the playability and like the connection that I developed with it emotionally. I was like, I want to play it for this live stream. So that's the kind of the guitar that I'm most hot on right now. But also like for the past 2 years, I think for Against Me, I played this like little guitar in my hand every night on stage for
That's
the
awesome.
acoustic moments. Yeah.
I'm speaking of Yamaha because, as you can see from that corner thing there, they helped make this a reality. So I thank them, and again thank you for being on this. Rumor has it you use a few pieces of Yamaha gear. Like, yes, you have the guitar, but I believe you have like speakers or something like that, or maybe a mixer. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, like I have a pair of NS10s that are like, that's the standard. Like those are the speakers that we listen to in electrical audio. Those are the speakers that I've listened to or checked the references on in every studio I've worked in probably my whole life, as a pair of Yamaha NS10s. They're like the coveted ones. But I have a pair of 8s as well. And those are like here at my home setup. And I'm so bad when it comes to like to actual like gear name or whatever, but I have like a mixing board that I use here at home or whatever, a Yamaha mixing board, and I have like a number of Yamaha drum machines that are what I play around with and write with.
Perfect. I mean, yeah. So there's a reason this is in part thanks to Yamaha, because you are a Yamaha ambassador of sorts, if you will. And so I'm sure they're grateful that you have been putting some of their kids through college and whatnot. Uh, jokes aside, since we're talking about gear and you were talking about the Rickenbackers, which are great, do you have one piece of music gear like the how would you phrase it? The stuck on a desert island type instrument where it's the piece, it's either got some sentimental value, it's rare. Is there a piece of music gear that you cannot live without?
An acoustic guitar, 100%. It's the acoustic guitar. Like, and that's almost the statement with this album too is like that's the fallback. That is like the ultimate symbol of freedom, of independence, is an acoustic guitar. And I know as long as I have an acoustic guitar, I can support myself. I can work as a musician, even if it's busking on a street corner. You know, again, like that I can, and that's all I need for songwriting when it comes down to it. All the other toys are nice, you know, like it's great to have a drum machine to work with. It's got all that stuff is great, but as long as I have an acoustic guitar, I'm good to go.
I
And
mean,
if like, go ahead.
there's few accompanying instruments that check off all the boxes. Like, yeah, you could do piano and accompany yourself, but it's not as portable, or it's cumbersome, or you're stuck sitting if you're not using a keytar. Singing is great by itself, but you need kind of a backing thing. Drums are not musically oriented as far as notes are concerned. Bass is a little bit muted, literally. But guitar is one of the few instruments, and I'm sure someone's going to flood the comments with, Ben, you're so wrong. How could you be wrong? But the point is, the guitar really is one of the best accompanying instruments. I mean, it's why most folk singers who had not a dollar to their name would go to a coffee bar or a busk, and it was just them and the guitar, and they said their piece, literally or figuratively, and got the message out. That's all. It's what's his name? Pete Seeger always said, "This is my oh, come on! Wow, I am like blanking out today." But like,
this is my rifle. This is my gun. No.
It was like he used to say, "Oh, my someone's gonna be so disappointed in me." What did he say? Like the anti-fascist machine or something like that. Oh boy, I'm embarrassing
Well, this
myself.
machine kills fascists. Yeah,
That's what it
sure.
was.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
machine kills fascists. So he was saying that this is an instrument that all I need is this and my lyrics, and I can tell a story and maybe convince people one thought process or another. So thank you. I appreciate you lending me that extra hand in that one. Um, but you know what? Speaking, let's go back to songwriting because you have a breadth of different songs you've written, different styles, different moods, different lyrics. Is there one that when you heard it and it was finished and you play it on stage is your pride and joy, the baby of your songs, just your proudest crowning achievement?
You know, I find that I guess like it's taken me perspective to feel that way about songs because oftentimes, you know, the experience of recording a record, recording a song, you know, you'll make a record and you'll be like, these are my favorite songs on this record, and then you'll go and tour on that record for a year or 2 years, and you're like, I never want to play those songs again as long
Exactly.
as I live. Um, but then there's these songs where you're like, wow, I wrote that song when I was 18 years old and I'm 40 now. I've been playing this song for 22 years on stage. I never would have thought that when I wrote that song, that it would have this much life to it, or that the meaning would continue to change. So I have like a handful of songs like that for me that I've, you know, played that long. A song called Walking Is Still Honest I wrote when I was 18 years old, that like I've played every Against Me show ever, you know, and I would be remiss to not like give the honor to a song like that. That being said, you know, like that song has probably like 3 different recordings of it that are out there, and if not 4 or 5, like including live versions. And I could probably listen to each of the recordings and be like, it could be better. But like the song itself, structurally speaking, it's like it's sound and it always makes the crowd go off, and I always enjoy playing it.
Perfect answer. And I'm glad you didn't stick with just they're all my favorite songs. It's like, oh, we know I love all genres of music. I listen to everything. It's nice to have a very astute opinion about one specific thing once in a while. Um,
Agreed.
I just I just found this funny. Someone made a Facebook comment because we were talking about like what's a portable instrument that you could use to accompany, and so Raymond goes, "It's so easy to noodle with a guitar. It's portable, and most people can relate to it somehow. Not so much with accordion." So yes, fair enough. Accordion you can use, but unless you're Weird Al, it's not, or John Linnell of They Might Be Giants. I don't know how many applications that will have where people aren't running out of the room in droves. Uh,
They're
so
heavy too. Talk about
yeah,
like
I
back
just played
pain,
one
you
with
know?
for fun, and it's daunting. I can't
Yeah.
imagine why you would put yourself through that unless you're sitting down. But then again, I'm carrying around huge amps and guitar cases galore. So who am I to judge? Um, but so we're stuck inside, unfortunately, and but touring was something you were doing, and now you're not. So I'm gonna ask the question that maybe you've been asked, but I'm very curious about the answer. What is something you miss, or what are things you miss about touring, and what is something you are so glad you are not dealing with because you're not touring?
The things I miss about touring, I think overall the biggest thing I miss is being a part of a team. Um, I think people's outside perspective of what it means to be in a band is that, like, there's the band and then there's the crew, and really, like, the way we've always toured is that it's like equal amongst everybody, and everyone's as important part of it. Like, and it's a team effort. Like when you're waking up for a 6:30 a.m. lobby call and you're on your way to the airport and you've got like a day of traveling, like everyone is going through that same experience together, and everyone has to get through it. And I like those group efforts, like that. I miss those small moments. Like I miss sitting in an airport lounge. I miss being on a plane. I miss like waiting for the bus driver to come and pick us up. I miss like we call it disco loadout, where like we finish playing the show and the club's going to turn into a club night, so you got to get your gear off the stage and get out within like half an hour, and everyone's just like humping gear as quick as they can. I miss stuff like that. I miss
Yeah,
feeling like
you miss it when you aren't doing it, but when you're in the midst, like I know some people just hate being in the airport terminals and stuff like that, which is why I was actually surprised when you said that. Um, so yeah, I think that's interesting that what you miss is clearly different than other people, but it's kind of the reminder of what it means to be on tour. It's the little things.
well, don't get me wrong, I have lounge access. So like I have a totally different
Oh, that
experience
kind of
at
thing.
the airport. So.
You got the miles.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I got way miles at this point.
Okay, so that's a different thing. Yeah, you don't have to sit next to the crying kid or whatnot. Um, so yeah, that's I mean, it's really okay. So that's interesting as far as the touring aspect. So one question that I'm curious about, because like I said at the beginning of the broadcast, you've become a beacon for many people in the trans community, and so I think, and I'm sure some of them are, or I would think many of them are also songwriters that are fans of yours. So what I'm curious about is, now that you're your true self, what are the most significant changes you've noticed as far as how you approach music as a writer, performer, or even listening to other songs that you didn't previously do?
Well, I kind of see it as all like really connected. And when you're starting out as a songwriter, like you're facing like inhibition. And if you've ever worked with a producer, the producer is going to, a good producer, the producer is going to urge you to dig deeper. Like they're going to be like, write what you know, right? Like you need to push yourself. You need to like uncover your truth. You need to like, you know, go deeper, just go deeper. Like, and to me, like, part of the process of coming out and accepting myself had a lot to do with songwriting, of like realizing like there's something holding me back. I am not the artist I should be because I'm not being completely honest with myself. If there's this whole part of my psyche that is there, that I can recognize is there, but that I am afraid to confront, then I am not being an effective artist or an effective songwriter. So in wanting like to be completely transparent with yourself, to be completely honest with yourself and develop as an artist, like you have to accept all the things about yourself that scare you, all the things about yourself that make you uncomfortable, all the things about yourself that like leave you most vulnerable. um and I try to live that way.
It's it's funny, I because as someone who's now trying to write lyrics, one of my fears, not to get personal per se, but one of my fears is that uh, I like to keep things close to myself when I can, but I'm afraid that it's that kind of balance of, if I want to be honest with my lyrics, that's great because then people will see that it's genuine, but and that's my fault, but I genuinely am sometimes afraid, how will people misinterpret this? Either they just flat out don't understand the song, or they take it as far as saying like, is that about me? What do you mean by that? And so I think that's incredible that you have the bravery, I would say, I don't know a better word, to just put it all out there as a songwriter. And I'm sure, and I'm not here to name names, there are tons of musicians out there that get like songs written for them and they sing them, and it's, and again, I'm not judging these people. Everyone has a different career path as a musician, but I feel like when these musicians have a team of songwriters write them a song and then they perform it on stage, they may connect with it as far as this is why they chose that song, but I don't think they're honest with themselves that that's how they feel. It's like reading out loud a book someone else wrote. So when I meet and hear from songwriters like yourself and countless others that are out there that sit down with the notebook and write the lyrics out and then perform them live, there's way more of an honesty to it that I personally appreciate, because that's where you feel the true essence of a song in some cases, like even more so than some pop songs that people put out that are suddenly about heartbreak and what. It's like, yeah, I mean, whoever wrote that did a great job, but I don't believe the person singing it truly feels that way. It's almost like seeing an actor portray out a performance in a movie. They may have a great performance, but I'm like, they never went through tragedy like that. So I,
Unless it's an actor who has gone through similar tragedy,
if
and
in
then you
rare
see in their performance like, oh, they know what this is like, and they're like, there's a transference that's happening there, and like there's a depth to their performance because they understand the material. And I think that same way about like people who are performing a song that's not their own song, like that there is a difference in that way too, even for for performers. And I really like, in kind of like talking about how like touring with a crew, it's like, everyone's just as important. I've been so lucky to be able to like be on many different sides of the fence, or like to see it all from different angles. Like I've produced records for bands, or like I've been in the band, or like seeing it from these different angles gives you a greater understanding. And when you're able to step outside of yourself, like that helps. But there's those moments where there's some artists where you can see where they took that leap. Where like, okay, David Bowie, I love David Bowie, right?
I mean, he's
Look
one of
at look at David Bowie's first like recorded output. You could tell he was really holding back. When David Bowie became Ziggy Stardust, which is totally like what the fuck, that's when David Bowie became David Bowie. They embraced this thing inside of them that they felt they had to communicate to him, which was a space alien.
right.
Like that it's just completely uniquely them, and they became something realized. And that's like, I think it's Slash even who had that quote of like, rock and roll is supposed to be the apex of like, who you are and who you want to be meeting. And
I've
I
never
like,
heard that quote, and I love it, and it makes so much more sense with everything that was a rock band up until the hair metal scene, because that's like I mean, no guy at one point would think, oh, I'm gonna put makeup all over my face and tease my hair and everything, but they're like, that's who I want to be on stage. That's who I want people to know me as. Because prior to that, they may have been telemarketers for all we know.
have you
And
ever read the book Perfecting Sound Forever?
nope, but I'm adding that to my Amazon wish list.
I highly recommend it because it really like breaks down in so many ways how like all trends in rock and roll are like responses to previous things that happened. Like the huge '80s Springsteen sound of the big snare was like a response to the like really close mic sound of like the like canyon bands happening in California, like just prior to that. Like,
Weird.
and then like how like there was punk that was a response to all the hippie stuff, and then coming
Right.
out of punk there was like the metal bands, and just how like recording techniques were all responses to each other, and it really, the way it lays it out, how interconnected it is
as
fascinating.
as someone who's really been getting into deep dives on understanding mixing, I am totally going to read that book because I am a dork for that stuff. Like I love Vox Online did a whole thing with their Earworm series where they talked about how the gated reverb changed the game in music, and that it was like I think it was when they recorded In the Air Tonight, it was a mistake in the control room, etc. And that was, I mean, that snare sound changed everything, and then like
Right.
did it in everybody else. But no, it's I mean it's really interesting how music shifts, and now with the internet we have so much access to so many genres of music that it wasn't like when it was mainstream. It was all right, we've got punk, and then we've got hip hop, and then we've got emo. It's now, oh, we probably got 20,000 different genres with 20 other thousand subgenres to those genres, and then subgenres and subgenres. So I I'm very curious, and I mean this is for a whole different discussion, but I'm very curious as how it's going to evolve musically. Where do we get to a gray area where everything's somewhat the same, or do we have so much disparity, or is it a weird combination of both that I can't put into words or even anything else? So that's just me going real existential with music. This is what me and my friends talk about like all the time.
I
So for
love it.
um, so I that's a lot of my questions, and I know you have some diehard fans that have lots of questions. I will read as many as I can till we're both out of breath, and I'm sure people. And if you're watching, I'll try to read some of them in the YouTube and Facebook comments. I can't promise I will get to them, but from the ones that submitted them earlier, here's some of my favorites that I saw. Thin B from Kissimmee, Florida asks, what is your biggest inspiration? Not necessarily who, but it could be who. What is your biggest inspiration?
What is my biggest inspiration? Um, I probably have it's father issues. No, like, I don't know. I guess, yeah, I don't know what my biggest inspiration is. That's not like, that's not a. I don't wake up in the morning and think like I must do this because this thing inspires me. I just always felt like driven in this way of like I
So
yeah.
it's life. Life is your biggest inspiration. The fact that you wake up should be, I guess, your inspiration. We were talking about how you never know when there's another day to record an album. So forgive me if I'm answering this question for you,
That's
but it
fine.
sounds
Yeah,
like you're
you
describing
take
that.
this one.
Yeah, it sounds like the idea of you having another day to make music is the inspiration that you, just based from what I learned from you 45 minutes ago. So there, I hope I helped you.
Thank you.
Um, so Mickey C from Colorado Springs, Colorado asks, "Would you ever play anything off Crime is Forgiven?" And my favorite song, their favorite song, has always been Impact, and they feel like they might have missed their chance to hear it because they were so young when you performed those songs. So basically, will you ever play those songs live?
Yeah, we've like actually we bust out Impact every so often, like every couple of years. We'll throw it into the set for like a tour and just for fun. But Walking is Still on Us, the song that we were talking about a little bit ago. That's off of
Right.
Crime is Forgiven by. Yeah, still play
Okay.
those songs.
So
Yeah.
there you go, Mickey. Make sure you get your tickets when this pandemic quiets down and people are allowed to go to concerts, whether they're wearing a huge bubble suit or whatnot. Maybe just bring a board that says, "Remember me from the live stream I asked for Impact."
I can play it now. Okay, go ahead.
Right now, someone's like, "Ben, keep never gonna play it. I can't believe you messed up." All right. Anyways, Owen C from Boone, North Carolina says, and this is not a question, but they said not really a question, but they wanted to say your music helped them so much in the past year. So just a compliment.
Right on, Ben. Thank you.
So thanks for that, Owen. Appreciate that. Janice G from Indian Head, Saskatchewan says, since COVID self-isolation has started, what is your new favorite thing that you never did or never liked before that you like now?
What is my new favorite thing? I don't know. I'm kind of like leaning into like certain routines. Like there's certain things that I realized later on in life as a touring musician that if I adhere to certain schedule things, they make the experience of touring that much easier and more enjoyable. And it's almost like a militaristic routine of like, touring in a bus, waking up in the morning, first thing, I make my bed, and then I'll go for a run. And when those things continue into life off of the road, it makes it seem seamless in a way that like it all has a continuity. So during a pandemic, continuing to stick to those routines of wake up in the morning, make your bed, go for a run, write 3 pages in your journal, work on songwriting, like doing those things, it makes the panic less even, especially with like running, where like, I'll have headphones in and I'll be running, and I know I can think back to like amazing runs I've taken on tour, and I can be running through a neighborhood here in Chicago and close my eyes and I can picture those runs like from a morning somewhere in the UK or somewhere in Germany, and it's like I'm transported back there. Um, but so it's those things that I find like that if I keep them constant, that it's better, you know?
So no, it's yeah, because sometimes I love my wife, and she definitely helps remind me that I got to do some routine stuff because as personally, I have a very chaotic life. I have lots of interests and got work, and I got all these things. So I definitely need to, and this is for anyone listening, everyone should have a routine of some kind. Just some little things that are necessities that you make a point to do in your life. And even I'm guilty of forgetting to make my bed or things like that, but it helps. It gives you structure, and everyone needs a little bit. You don't need all of the structure, but just a little bit. So it's nice to hear that you do these little routines to keep that flow of like almost grounding yourself. Uh,
Yeah.
so what I was curious though, you said you were listening while running. Just a side note, because I'm a music geek all around. What do you listen to when you run?
I make playlists. I've actually been for the past month. I've been posting one every Monday on my on Twitter. So I can
Cool.
forward you my most recent one.
Oh, absolutely. I am always down for. And this is me being a hypocrite where I'm like, I listen to all kinds of music, but I actually do because I'll go through these phases where I'm like, everyone's talking about uh, deathcore, and I don't know anything about deathcore. I should at least educate myself because, again, if as someone who works at Sam Ash Music, I should know the gear the genres are using to some extent. Like I didn't know what noise gate was till Gent became a thing, and I was like, oh, that's why noise gate works the way it does, and it's for that. So it's sometimes I have to educate myself, but I definitely look forward to seeing that playlist. Here's a fun one that is not at all musically oriented. What are the top three? I don't know why three, but top three restaurants you've enjoyed while touring?
I can tell you right off the bat. The first one is the Grit in Athens, Georgia. My One of my favorite all-time venues to play is this place called the 40 Watt in Athens, and right around the corner is the Grit, and they have this thing that's called the Golden Bowl, which is just like brown rice and tofu and some broccoli and like a sauce thing on it, and it's just some carrots in there. So good, so good.
Interesting, because
Um,
I'm not personally a tofu person all the time, but if I trust your judgment, if you're saying this is worth it, because everything else you said, I love me a healthy bowl of rice and veggies, honestly. So I haven't been to Athens. I've been to Atlanta, but yeah, I'm definitely gonna check that place out. And if I forget, I've got this video to rewatch.
yeah.
So and two more if you got them off the top of your head.
Then there's I was talking about this place the other day because I guess I was thinking about food. There's a taco stand in St. Augustine, Florida called Nalu's. Just like right by there's an amphitheater there, show space. They do awesome shows. All size of bands play there. But this taco stand, so good. Their fish tacos, mahi mahi tacos. Oh my god, will blow your mind. Comes with a side of like yellow rice and beans, and damn, is it good. I
Oh,
was
by the
thinking
way,
about
for
that
those
place.
watching, a good Mexican restaurant that serves tacos, their rice should be any color but white. That's what I've noticed. If it's yellow rice or orange rice, you're in for a really awesome place.
Yes.
And do you have a third? I don't mean to put the pressure on.
I'll go for another Florida choice for the third. And I was talking about this place the other day too. There's a venue in downtown Orlando called The Social that we've played at for a number of years. Great venue, but on Friday and Saturday nights there will be a vegan hot dog vendor with just a push cart that for like a decade plus has always been outside of the show. And anytime we play there, I'm always like vegan hot dog guy after the show. Let's go get hot dogs.
Awesome. I'm see. I'm also I love myself some good food, so these are all things I'm gonna put on my notepad and see if it'll remind me when I happen to be in the area. Probably be like 20 years from now, but still. Um, okay, back to music questions. Brian S. from Mawa, New Jersey asks, What's your favorite acoustic guitar?
My favorite acoustic guitar at the moment, it is 100% the FG3. I love that guitar. I got that guitar, like, opened up the case. I had never seen it before. It was sent to me blind. Going on a blind date that actually works out, where I opened up the case and it was just instantaneous of like, yeah, like there it was just
So did
there.
you Netflix and chill with your guitar,
A hundred
basically?
percent. Yeah, yeah, basically, yeah. And it was just like, this is my new friend. I love you. So that guitar, the FG3, is my jam right
Awesome. Awesome. And checks in the mail. No, kidding. But I'm sure
now.
Yamaha's thrilled that you said that.
But
Uh,
no, that's not even the Yamaha that they want me promoting. I'm sure. Like they're just like it's like a genuine connection. I can't fake the funk when it comes to like feeling a connection with a guitar, because I honestly like believe like that guitars have souls. I believe that like some guitars get angry with you. I have like a theory about guitars too, where most oftentimes I don't connect with new guitars. I connect with used guitars.
I'm
Like I
with
feel
you.
like,
I'm with you. I love
yeah,
a used instrument.
yeah, and new guitars have this attitude of entitlement about them, like,
I
oh
am
yes, I'm
nervous with
meant
used
for the
instruments.
stage. Yeah, yeah. And whereas used guitars, they like have more of an appreciation for it, like so I really like guitars. To me, they have souls. They were living things that carries over into them, and I just like either feel a connection with an instrument or I don't. And when I don't, I break strings. That's all there
So
is to it.
I didn't want to do the Sam Ash plug here, but I have to. We carry so much used gear, and everything Laura just said is 100% accurate. Like these, like forget buying a new relic instrument. Get one that was relicked by someone playing it. It's been broken into. I mean, Willie Nelson's favorite guitar has a gigantic hole in it. Just
Right.
not the sound hole, another gigantic hole in it. And it's arguably one of the most iconic acoustic guitars.
I was thinking about that guitar actually the other day. Its name is Trigger, right?
Right.
I was thinking about how, like, I forget if it was in like late 80s, early 90s, Willie Nelson got into all that tax trouble or whatever. And there was like the estate sale. He had to basically sell everything that he owned. And I was thinking, like, I wonder when that happened if he had like a friend take Trigger and like hide it for him so that wouldn't get like possessed by the government. But
I'm
it goes
pretty
back.
sure the Martin guys, when I went to the museum they had, because he's got a very big personal attachment to that instrument. Like that is, I'm pretty sure something like that happened where
Right.
he said, "I'll sell a kidney before I sell this instrument."
But that goes back to what I'm talking about with the acoustic guitar. Like you can take everything away from someone, from a person like Willie Nelson or myself, and as long as that acoustic guitar is there, that's all I need. Like I'm good.
So yeah, I mean, I I got so much gear, and there are, I'm not going to name names, but I do have some personal favorites. Um, so now moving on to amplifiers, because you mentioned the AC30, but Clarence S from Midland, Texas, is asking, you have one amp for the rest of your life. I think I know the answer. They know you have a twin reverb and an AC30. You can only have one for the rest of your life. What's it going to be?
That my twin.
The twin reverb.
Yeah, yeah, but it's that specific twin. If it was just a random twin, no, I'll take an AC30. And like, my switch to AC30s in a lot of ways for live came from playing fly-in shows where AC30s to me are so consistent. Like if I
Yeah.
get a rental AC30, I know it's gonna sound like it's gonna be fine. It'll get me through the show. Some of those twins, when you get them, are like, what is this? What is happening here? Like just sounds so different from twin to twin. You get the right twin, and it's the best thing ever. But that twin that I have, it has like aftermarket EV speakers in there. The magnets are like that thick. It's like beat to hell, but it is the loudest amp, and it has just like the most brilliant tone. And I love that
Do
amp.
you happen to, and this is me geeking out, do you happen to know what tubes are in it?
I don't off the top of my head, no. Mm.
Okay. I just didn't know like if you had replaced the tubes or anything like that. Um, Another question from Stephanie D from Roanoke, Virginia. If you were only able to see one band play live again, who would it be? That's a good one. I like that question.
Like I get only one more show, or this is a band I have to see repeatedly night after, like I could
No.
see
I
them.
think they mean you have one ticket. It's a ticket for any band you want to see. And I would think it's a band that's still playing. Let's not do the whole, oh, it would be Jimi Hendrix with Eric Clapton. Like we'd all pick that. But what is that one band still around, still playing that you can only, this is the infinite ticket. You can use it with any band as long as they're a band that still tours. Who would it be?
Okay, and only one concert, right? And this is my
Yep,
last
you're
concert
only able
ever.
to see one band play live again. Just one.
Okay, this is gonna come really from left field, and I don't really care about any judgment I receive for this. I've never seen them play. U2.
Oh, no, that's actually a really good answer because I've never seen them, but everybody who has seen them says it was life changing. Like, take all the drama you want from what people think of Bono and whatnot, doesn't matter. I've heard it like hits your soul kind of, and I've heard the same thing described by people who've seen Coldplay is another one of those bands. I feel like Peter Gabriel kind of has
Oh,
this.
I saw Coldplay play. We played a festival with them in Tokyo and got to go on stage, side of the stage for Coldplay playing. Alicia Keys played with them. I
No,
was not a fan, and I walked away in love with Chris Martin. I was like, that he has energy. That was charisma. It was fantastic. It was.
I I was one of those people that I liked Yellow, and then I was too cool for school. You can't like Coldplay if you like Led Zeppelin. That's not you like. And then they came out with Viva La Vida when I think it was my
Great
first year,
album. Great album.
and I was like, between them and Brian Eno, that made me realize these guys, they're going to be one of the greats. I
Yeah,
truly
yeah.
believe that. And I'm sure the comments are going to be like, I'm never shopping at that to say it for Ben saying that. But seriously, they are truly fantastic. Um,
Yep.
so I know we're at the hour, but I just want to see if there were anything that YouTubers and Facebook people said. Oh, this is a good one. This is from Baxter Hawk. So when the world opens back up and you're ready to start touring again, you board a plane. Where is the first place you're going?
I want to go to Europe.
Any specific city or country?
If I'm going there on tour, if I could just go, if I could, I want to go to Australia. I'm going to Australia, and I'm probably not coming back. I'm just gonna stay in Australia. I'm
Honestly,
flying
I
to
would love to
Melbourne.
go. I would love to go there and then hop over to New Zealand because my wife and I love. Well, she loves Lord of the Rings. I like Lord of the Rings, and we just want to live in Hobbiton and just hang out in those little hobbit holes.
Yeah, yeah. But I would head to Australia, and I would hang out, and then I would head to Europe. I would do a full lap.
Perfect. Doug G says, and this is a very good question. Nothing against other questions. Have you experienced writer's block, and how have you gotten past it?
Yeah, I have at various points. There's this book I would highly recommend called The Artist Way. I think maybe some people think this book is a little cliche, whatever. It's helped me a great deal. And I mentioned, at the beginning of this interview, talking about how like I wake up in the morning, I write 3 pages in my journal. And this book basically teaches you how to never have writer's block. And it approaches it conceptually as like your brain is a muscle, creativity is a muscle. Like the weight you can lift mentally, building that muscle is akin to like, you do push-ups, you can do more push-ups, like, and building muscles that way. So the idea of being in constant practice of constantly writing, even if you don't necessarily feel totally inspired, kind of pushes you through writer's block. And there's like a bunch of exercises in the book that help you work on building the muscles, and I highly recommend it, and I found it
What was that
very
called again?
strategic.
Because I'm probably going to read it.
The Artist Way.
Because one thing I always forget, and it applies to sports too, which is you're not going to make 100% of the shots you take. And that's the same with writing songs. You're going to write bad songs. I've written bad songs and can't accept that I'm writing bad songs, whether it's the lyrics or the song itself. But you got to make it, finish it. You can always put it aside and come back to it, but at least make songs constantly because you won't get better if you don't know where your strengths and weaknesses are from writing songs. And then also, and this is the scariest part, share them with people. And share them with your best friends and family. Not the family that thinks like you're such a good singer, you should be on American Idol. I'm talking about the family that's willing to like tell you that's terrible. Don't ever write songs like that again. Or that's a great song. I really like what you did there, because whether or not you take their advice, you're getting some good feedback of just response. It doesn't have to necessarily be the words. It's just their visceral reaction to it can be part of it.
Well, I'll go a step further and say, actually, for me in that situation, it's my visceral reaction. Like, I like to play songs for people when I've recorded them before I release them, because I know when I'm listening to something I've made in front of somebody else, that as long as I'm paying attention to the way I feel, I can tell if it's done or not. Like, if there's a part of the song coming up where I'm like wincing because I know there's maybe a lyric that's slightly embarrassing, I know I should work on that lyric a little more. If there's a part of the song where I'm like, oh, here comes that spot where my voice is not that great, I should have done a better vocal take. If I'm listening thinking, this mix kind of sucks, the mix kind of sucks, and it's not anything to have to do with them, it's just, it's like you put on an outfit that you're not so sure you look cool in, and you wear it around people and you're like, I feel really uncomfortable. It doesn't matter what they think, you feel uncomfortable. You need to put on
Wow.
something different.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Seeing it as a self, like you see yourself doing the song, less so the reaction. I mean, both are probably valid in their certain respects, but yours, I never thought of it in that context, because in a similar way, it's like I have friends that are stand-ups, and it's very similar to that, because sometimes when you deliver the joke, the cadence of how you deliver the line, where the pauses are, what words you use to substitute, can change the joke. Because look, the same joke done the same way can be different in each room. And that's the same with songs. You can play a song and play it in New York City and they love it. You play it in Athens, Georgia, you were saying, and maybe they don't like it. And that's what's really interesting about songwriting is if you think every song you write is going to be a hit and everywhere you play it is going to be great, you are in for a rude awakening, because that is not life at all for a musician. It's a lot of, first, you should be lucky if people pay attention when you start writing songs as a musician. Like, I imagine you were a busker and people just walked right past. Nothing against you, just when you were starting out, just, oh, there's a guitar player, whatever. Okay, keep going.
Oh, sure, 100%. But that, like, that's what kind of built me, was that defiance of it, of like, especially being in a place where we were busking out of necessity of like, oh, there's no venues to play here. Well, we'll play on the street corner. No one likes the music that we're into. We don't care. We're going to do it anyways. No one will put out records for us. We'll put out our own records. No one will book a tour for us. We'll book our own tours. And those were how to learn like the proper way to do it, and that, like, I mean, I attribute that to everything.
That's, I mean, that's all it takes. And that's to anybody. I mean, Laura's telling you, I'm not even a professional musician. I can tell you the only way to get better as a musician is do it as often as you can, if not every single day, because that's with any, I mean, that's any career, but as a musician, you got to put it all out there. You got to, and I mean, yes, there are those that get a lucky break and they post a few videos on YouTube and they're pop stardom, but that's not realistic. And the real artists out there are the ones that do music because that's what they want to do. And it's the scariest thing in the world. And I'm guilty of it. Look, I work at a corporation. So I'm like the last person people should be listening to as far as this advice, but I can at least be honest with myself and say that I could have been like, I'm not working for this corporation. I'm going to go out on the road. But I do love this company. I love what we do. And that's part of my love is music in all aspects. And I mean, I've got a thing of pedals right there because I love playing with them and learning about them and selling them. So I just recommend to anyone who's watching that's watching this, because not only are they a fan of Laura, but they too want to be a songwriter. Just try being a musician. You're going to have a lot of people say, why are you doing it? Those songs aren't great. All the worst things that they could possibly imagine. But the best ones are the ones that stick to it because they know they're doing something right, commit to it. And lo and behold, you become someone like Laura. I'm sure, Laura, you went through all of those things where people are like, why are you being a musician? You should be doing this career. But I'm glad that you stuck with it because you've made some great music because you've stuck with it. And I
Thank you.
think you should realize that. And that's important. Against Me would not exist, and nor would your solo efforts had you not said, screw all of you. I'm doing my thing. This is this kind of music I want to write, and I know people want to hear it.
Sure.
So I think that's awesome. I just wanted to say that. I didn't mean to get all serious about it, but in all seriousness, that's what it takes to be a musician. On lighter notes, um, Cass Gnosis says, I saw you guys twice in 24 hours at Riot Fest in 2016. It was the best 24 hours of my entire life.
It's a
So,
pretty good 24 hours.
um, someone just wanted to point out that they loved that you talk about how guitars have souls. And even I agree that it is something unique. Not every instrument can have that. I know people say that about lots of brass and woodwind, but I do agree with you. It came from a tree. A tree is its own organic thing, and then you make that organic thing into a new type of uh, piece of art that by itself is beautiful, but it doesn't become what it is unless someone holds it. And everybody who holds that instrument does something different with it. And so it is interesting to perceive guitars, especially, that they have more to them than just they're an instrument. And so, yeah, I'm going through just what people are saying, and that people are loving this. This is that someone's just thrilled that you're friends with Frankie Arrow. Um, and I actually was like, oh, that's cool because my wife's favorite band is My Chemical Romance. Favorite, absolute favorite. And I got her as for her birthday, and I'm probably still reaping the benefits from it by getting her to meet Frank, and Frank played this guitar on stage and then gave her the guitar sign. So, Frank, if you're watching, again, my wife and I thank you so much, and it made her birthday. It was like the greatest thing in the world. But and speaking of which, how did you and Frank become friends? Was it through touring? Was it through just mutual friends?
Well, Against Me played a show with My Chemical Romance back in like, I want to say it was probably 2003 in Memphis in a venue where there was maybe 10 people there at the show, and like upstairs was legitimately a meth lab. Like you had to go up and walk through this meth lab to get paid. Um, and that was the first time we met them. And then, flash forward like 5 years later, and we had both signed to Warner Brothers, to Sire, and we had the same A&R person, a guy named Craig Aronson was both of our A&R person. So we had that connection, and then fast forward a couple years later after that, Against Me played the last My Chemical Romance shows, which were Blink 182, Rancid, My Chemical Romance, and Against Me, before they went on the extended hiatus or whatever. And then
December show.
Frank's, what's that?
I was saying then they had those December shows that I was tempted to go to see. Had I known there'd be a pandemic, I would have flown there and spent
Right,
all the
right.
money in the world.
Right, but so yeah, we played their last shows until they came back recently. But in the interim, while My Chem was away, Against Me and Frank, we toured a couple times. We did like a North America tour, and then I did the run with Devouring Mothers and Frank, and yeah, just I think the world of him. I think he's great, and I love My Chem. So
Yeah, someone speaking of which said would be great to hear collabs between you two. I don't know if you guys have done that before or if you plan to do that. But just someone's throwing that out there into the ether to see if it becomes a reality.
I like it. Yeah, let's manifest it.
Um, and then I'm gonna ask you one more question because I just realized we're 15 minutes over, and I want to make sure we get whatchamacallit, the prize to the winner. This is the last question. It's cut off, but I'll read it. I love the new album Stay Alive, and I know that it started out as possibly being an Against Me album. Will there be any full band electric versions of these, either live or recorded?
We actually already recorded every single song pretty much. Like there are versions of it that have Against Me already playing on them, that exist. I don't think they were ever mixed or anything, and they weren't like we're recording this for an album. Like they were more like we were demoing it. But I imagine there will be in one form or another. Whether that's like for an album or live versions or something. But we'll play them. And I mean, when it comes down to it, like I just want to get on the road again. Like I would like, you asked earlier, like whoever wanted to know, like, would you ever play songs off of Crime? I would play only Crime tonight songs if like I had the chance to play tonight. I would literally play any songs if I had the opportunity to go on tour and play it. So I feel like once we're able to play shows again, it will just be this like outpouring of like hey, you want to hear that and that'll make you happy, I am happy to play it for
I'm
you,
sure everybody is going to be doing this. I can't
Yeah,
wait. All right, so I know I got you for an extra 15 minutes. I apologize. I didn't mean to go over that much.
no worries.
I was just having such a great conversation and people had some really great questions. Before we go, I just want to announce I've picked a random winner for this awesome giveaway that someone's going to get Laura's brand new album, a physical copy. None of that streaming BS. You want physical. You want that, take it and put it on the record player. And it goes to Shane Greener. Congratulations. We've got your email. We're going to, there you go. We're going to reach out to you so that Polyvinyl, when the album physically exists, they will send it right to you. So that's not to say to wait until then to listen to the album. Listen to it now and then listen to it in high def on great speakers on a great turntable. And then I think it's also like is it a splatter vinyl?
There's a couple different vinyl variations, so I'm sure we'll send you one of the limited edition colored
Oh,
versions. But
okay.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there you go, Shane. Shane, get excited. Now, with all that being said, I want to say, Laura, thank you so much for all the time you've spent talking. I learned a lot more so than I would have ever expected. And I hope all of the people that were listening and watching enjoyed this too. I haven't done one of these interviews in a long time, so it's really nice to do this. And what a great guest to do it with. I really appreciate this. And before I pass on to you, I just want to say again, thank you to all the people that are watching this. If you're a Sam Ash customer, thank you for being a Sam Ash customer. If not, we hope you become one. And most importantly, thank you, Yamaha, for making this possible. And if you're interested in being like Laura, we've got those Yamaha guitars she mentioned and plenty more Yamaha gear. But enough of the sales pitch. Laura, is there anything you want to say in general? Any plugs, anything at all?
Now, just stay alive.
Stay alive. Well said. So on that note, thank you all. And we'll see you at the next stream. And check out Laura's new album, Stay Alive, on streaming services and pick it up on vinyl if you can get a chance. Until then,